Welcome back to The Trust Show. In today's episode, I'll be diving into Chapter 18 of the book The Trust Premium. And this one is all about action, taking action. If you've been following along, we talked about how trust works, why it matters, and how it can drive customer loyalty and premium pricing. But all that knowledge won't move the needle unless it turns into behavior. And that's exactly what this chapter is about. It's about forming new habits that systematically improve your trustworthiness and eliminate the behaviors that quietly erode trust, often without you even realizing it. You learn a simple 7-step framework for creating trust that I call trust habits. I actually have a registered trademark on trust habits. It's a small, repeatable actions that over time make a big difference in how customers experience you. Whether you're a solopreneur, a salesperson, or a seasoned executive, this is where the theory becomes practice and where trust becomes a competitive edge. Let's get into it right after this. Welcome to The Trust Show. I'm Yoram Solomon, your host, the author of the Book of Trust, and facilitator of the Trust Habits Workshop. My mission is simple. I want to help you form habits that build your trustworthiness, because the answer to this question will have the biggest impact on your personal and professional success or failure. Can I trust you? Chapter 18, Trust Habits, Forming New Habits that Change Old Behaviors and Build Trust. Every summer, my wife and 2 daughters, Maya and Shira, used to fly to Israel for 3 to 4 weeks to visit the family. I don't typically join them. It's a long flight and it's hard for me to get away from my work for such a long time. However, we typically combine their trip to Israel with a US or European family trip. And in 2012, I joined them when they stayed in New York for 5 days on their way back from Israel. On the last day, since our flight back to Dallas was not until the evening, we took the subway to the Rockefeller Plaza. I should add that the main TV network we watch at home is NBC, and we watch the early part of the Today Show every morning. We stood by the fence and waved when the anchors came out. After a while, we decided to go into their experience store on the second floor of the GE building. This was during the 2012 London Olympics, and the store had plenty of memorabilia and accessories related to it. As I was browsing through different shirts, 3 ladies approached me. One was wearing makeup for an on-air performance. I did not recognize her then, but she was NBC's nutrition editor, Madeleine Fernstrom. And the other 2 carried clipboards. "Would you like to appear on the Today Show this morning?" one of them asked. "Would I?" I asked myself. "What do you want me to do on the Today Show?" I asked. "It's about weight loss," they carefully answered. I looked down to see what made them seek me out for a show about weight loss. But hey, any reason is a good reason to be on national TV, right? And this was not just any TV show. This was The Today Show. "What do you need me to do?" Every morning, we turn to the audience to see if there are any questions. We need you to ask a question associated with weight loss. If you have a question we would like to ask it on air. I thought for a second and realized I actually have a good question. An excellent question indeed. Okay, how's this? I know what I have to do to lose weight. I know how I need to eat. I know how I need to exercise. Knowledge is not the issue. Where do you get the motivation? "Oh, this is a great question. Let's put him on air," said Fernstrom. The others immediately took notes on their clipboards and invited me to another room where I would get some makeup, but not too much. After all, We don't want me to shine on TV too much. Maya and I then went to a room where many others invited to ask questions on the show stood. I guess we weren't the only ones. However, they put us in the front row, and I got to ask the first question. So I asked the question. The answer was pretty generic. You need to take small steps, and those will motivate you. And you also need to get the support of your family. And that was it. After we got the answer, we left the room, finished our shopping at the NBC Experience store, collected our luggage from the hotel, and flew back to Dallas. On that flight, I started thinking, if I was right, knowledge wasn't the issue, and motivation was, then how could I not solve this problem? I'm not a nutrition or weight loss expert, but after all, I had just finished my doctoral research 2 years earlier studying motivation, albeit in the context of creativity in organizations, but still motivation. By the time we landed in Dallas, I had already analyzed the problem and made a plan. To make a long story short, my goal was to lose 32 pounds over the next 6 months and keep them off. I achieved that goal 3 days early and kept the weight off, at least until the COVID-19 pandemic, during which I gained some of that weight back. At my doctor's request, I wrote a book in 2014 called Worst Diet Ever, in which I described the process. Why am I telling you all this? In parts 2 and 3 of this book, I showed you what behaviors would make the customer consider you trustworthy, so you now know. But I didn't show you how to change them. Just like weight loss, knowledge is not enough. You need motivation, and furthermore, you need a process. When I wrote and published the book Worst Diet Ever, my wife asked me why I chose to deviate from my main area of expertise and write a book about weight loss. Initially, I didn't have a good answer other than I felt I needed to write and publish that book, and my physician asked me to. But over time, I realized that the book was not only about weight loss, diet, or nutrition. The book was really about how to form new habits that change all behaviors that allow you to do the things that are important, even though they are not immediate or urgent. That book and the process I described in it became the foundation from my trustworthiness creation process, which I branded Trust Habits. The process generally applies to forming new habits that will change all behaviors and build trustworthiness in every relationship. However, while in the Book of Trust and the Mini Book of Trust, I described the process generally, here I adapted it to the relationship between a salesperson or a professional and a customer, current or future. Note that this is a much shorter version of the Trust Habits process than described in those other books. It is incorporated here only as a reference and overview of the complete process. Step 1. Identify a specific customer. Once you commit to strengthening the trust between you and your customers, it might feel tempting to try and improve all your customer relationships at once. This is a natural reaction, especially because many trust-building frameworks treat trust as a universal, absolute process. However, as you've learned throughout this book, trust is relative and personal, and there is no such thing as becoming universally trusted by everyone. Attempting to address trust across all your customer relationships simultaneously will dilute your efforts and make meaningful progress almost impossible. Instead, focus on one specific customer relationship at a time. This could be a prospective customer you want to win over, or a current customer you feel doesn't trust you as much as you think they should. By narrowing your focus, you'll be able to address the specific dynamics of that relationship, building trust more effectively and efficiently. There are several reasons for this approach. Trust-building habits carry over. As you form new habits and behaviors that build trust with one customer, you'll naturally apply them to other customer relationships. Trust building is a transferable skill. Trust is transferable, the fifth law of trust. When you strengthen trust with a particular customer, that trust can ripple outward. Satisfied customers will share positive feedback, leading to transferable trust through reviews, references, recommendations, and reputation. Focus produces results. Attempting to work on multiple relationships all at once will leave you distracted by differences in trust levels, expectations, and personalities across customers. Focusing on a single relationship allows you to hone in on what needs improvement and measure your progress. Which customer should you choose? Building trust takes much more effort than sending a bulk email message to thousands of potential customers who will ignore it. So, it is essential that when selecting the customer relationship to focus on, you prioritize customers who are most likely to value and reward your trustworthiness. Building trust requires significant time and effort, so focusing on customers willing to pay a higher trust premium and who appreciate your trustworthiness the most will ensure your efforts deliver maximum value. Look at customers who meet these characteristics: low knowledge and experience. Customers who lack familiarity with your product or service are less confident in their ability to evaluate options on their own. They rely heavily on your expertise and trustworthiness to guide their decisions. These customers are more likely to pay a higher trust premium and value your effort to build trust. Risk-averse profiles. Risk-averse customers are particularly sensitive to potential failures or losses. They prioritize trust over cost or convenience and will value your efforts to reduce uncertainty. These customers are willing to pay more to work with someone they perceive as reliable and trustworthy. High fear and severe relative consequences. Customers who perceive the consequences of failure as severe, whether financial, emotional, or professional, place an exceptionally high value on trust. These customers will appreciate your efforts to demonstrate dependability, as it alleviates their fear and increases their confidence in working with you. Naturally trustful individuals. Inherently, more trusting customers are more likely to respond positively to your trust-building efforts. They are less skeptical and more willing to reward providers they perceive as trustworthy. By focusing on customers with these traits, you'll invest your effort in the relationships most likely to generate significant returns. These customers will not only value your trustworthiness, but will be willing to reward it with loyalty, transferable trust, and a willingness to pay a higher trust premium. How do you identify a customer who doesn't trust you enough? Ask them. However, keep in mind that while direct feedback is ideal, customers may not feel comfortable openly discussing trust. Consider that customers who don't trust you may hesitate to give honest feedback. Ask someone else. Seek input from colleagues, team members, or others who interact with the customer. They may provide insights into the customer's level of trust and why it might be lacking. Look for clues. Observe the customer's behavior. Are they disengaged? Do they push for price reductions, avoid meetings, or seem hesitant to trust you? These can all be signs of insufficient trust. This is where face-to-face meetings allow you to read body language and not only read words off an email. Step 2. Identify old bad behavior. Wait, why not focus on doing one more good thing to improve your trustworthiness? Why zero in on the bad? Because, as you remember when reading about the positivity component of the relative trust model, bad is much stronger than good. As I've explained earlier, the negative impact of bad behavior far outweighs the positive impact of a good one. If you answer a customer's question honestly, it will increase their trust in you, but not nearly as much as it would decrease if you lied. Trust is fragile, and bad behaviors break it much faster than good behaviors build it. Unfortunately, chances are you're already doing something that causes you to lose trust with a customer. You may not even realize it. The good news is that stopping that bad behavior can have a much greater impact on your trustworthiness than adding another good one. This is why step 2 centers on identifying the worst thing you do in the customer relationships you selected in step 1. Of course, not everything you're doing in that relationship is bad. You're likely doing many good things. Don't stop those. But among the bad behaviors, there's one that stands out as the most damaging. Your goal is to identify it, accept it, and understand it so you can fix it. Remember, what matters most isn't what you think is bad. It's what the customer thinks. Even if their perception is only 10% true, it's 100% real to them. Here's an example. A customer might believe you're unreliable because you take too long to respond to emails. You might feel this is unfair because you prioritize quality responses over speed, but their perception of you as unresponsive impacts trust regardless of your reasoning. I'll use this example later. How to identify your bad behavior. Just like determining if a customer trusts you, you can use 3 techniques to identify your bad behavior. Ask the customer directly. They may provide honest feedback if they trust you enough. Be mindful that the lack of trust might make them hesitant to be fully open with you. Ask a third party. Sometimes a colleague or a team member who interacts with the same customer can provide insight into what you are doing wrong. It may be easier for the customer to share their concerns with someone else than to address you directly. Look for clues. Pay attention to the customer's behavior. Do they avoid meetings, ask for repeated assurances, or challenge your recommendations? These signs can reveal areas where they perceive you as less trustworthy. Again, this is why a face-to-face meeting or even a video call is better than an email or a phone call because it allows you to observe the customer's body language and read their nonverbal messages. When you ask the customer what you are doing that's holding you back from being more trusted, you're also signaling to the customer that you care and want to improve. That's a powerful signal to send, but it also comes with the responsibility to make a change. Using the 6 trust components. When identifying your bad behavior, use the 6 components of trust to guide your analysis. Competence. Are you perceived as lacking knowledge, experience, or skills? Do you miss deadlines or fail to deliver high-quality work? Personality compatibility. Is there a behavior or trait they find annoying or incompatible with their own values or personality? Remember that every customer has a different personality. Symmetry. Do they feel the relationship is unbalanced or unfair? Are you seen as benefiting more than they do? Positivity. Are your interactions with them overly negative, self-centered, or dismissive? Do you make assumptions instead of relying on data? Time and intimacy. Are you spending enough time with them? Are your communications clear and frequent enough, or do they feel ignored? Reflect before moving forward. Once you've identified the bad behavior, take the time to reflect. Why are you doing it? For example, if a customer feels you're unresponsive to emails, is it because you're overwhelmed with work? Because you prioritize thoroughness over speed? Keep asking why until you reach the root cause. Next, understand how this behavior impacts trust. Does it make the customer question your reliability, feel undervalued, perceive you as disinterested? This understanding will help you address the issue effectively in the next step. Identifying and addressing a single bad behavior may seem unimportant, but it's the foundation for making significant improvements in your trustworthiness. Focus on fixing one thing at a time for meaningful and lasting results. Step 3. Define a new good habit. In step 1, you identified a specific customer relationship to work on. In step 2, you uncovered a bad behavior holding you back from being more trusted by that customer. Now, in step 3, it's time to identify a new good habit to adopt, one that will counteract the bad behavior you just identified. Why a habit? Because being trustworthy isn't about doing something right just once. It's about consistently doing the right thing. Building trust requires sustained effort over time. And forming a habit ensures you can maintain this effort long enough for trust to grow. Habits are things you don't have to think about. You do them automatically. If you have to think about the new behavior every time you do it, it will not last. What makes a good habit? A new habit you choose must meet a simple but critical criterion. It must counteract the bad behavior identified in step 2. Sometimes the solution might seem as simple as stopping the bad behavior altogether. For example, if you identified that you interrupt customers during conversations, a bad habit, your new habit could simply be to stop interrupting them. However, in most cases, the bad behavior exists because there were a valid reason behind it. Something you were trying to achieve, even if the approach was flawed. Stopping the bad habit outright without addressing the underlying need might not work. Back to the example from step 2. If the customer feels it takes you too long to respond to emails, that's what they know. As I suggested before, it could be because it takes you time to gather a thoughtful response, and you value your response quality. That's a perfectly valid reason on your side. However, the customer doesn't know that. All they know is that it takes you too long to respond to emails. That's their reality, even if it's only a perception. Remember that what happens 1 inch outside the frame never happened. So, what could a new habit be? It could be to always respond within 24 hours to an email. If a more thoughtful response is required, you can simply answer by acknowledging the customer's request, telling them you will be working on it, and giving them a timeline for a more thoughtful, detailed, complete answer. How to choose the right habit? To find the best new habit, consider these 3 steps. Ask yourself why you had the bad habit in the first place. Why were you doing the thing that caused mistrust? Once you understand the root cause, brainstorm a way to satisfy that same need without undermining trust. Consult others. If you're unsure what habit to adopt, ask someone you trust or even the customer directly. For example, this is what I've been doing wrong, and this is why I was doing it. What can I do instead to eliminate the bad behavior while still addressing the original need? Use resources. The Book of Trust includes many practical trust-building habits tailored for different roles and relationships. For example, salesperson habits, always respond within 24 hours. Consultant habits, be transparent about limitations and set clear expectations. Leader habits, follow through on commitments without fail. Choose a habit that directly addresses the bad behavior and aligns with the specific customer relationship you're focused on. Requirements for the new habit. The habit must meet the following criteria: counteract the bad behavior. It must directly address and resolve the issue identified in step 2. Be sustainable. The habit should be something you can do consistently, regularly, and repeat it. Trust is built through repeated positive actions. Satisfy the original reason for the bad habit. If the bad habit existed because you were trying to achieve something important, the new habit should still allow you to achieve that goal, just without the negative impact. For example, let's say you identify a bad habit. You often use overly technical jargon with customers, making them feel excluded or confused. Why did you do it? You wanted to demonstrate your expertise and assure the customer they were in good hands. What's the new habit? Replace jargon with clear, customer-friendly language that still conveys your knowledge without alienating them. And when you must use industry jargon, ask the customer if they are familiar with it, and if not, or if you suspect they're not, but are just embarrassed to tell you, explain it anyway. By identifying and committing to one new habit, you'll take a focused and practical step toward building trust with your customer. Remember, trust isn't built overnight. It's the result of consistent, intentional actions. Keep it simple, stay committed, and let the results speak for themselves. Step 4. Make it SMART. S-M-A-R-T. Once you've identified the bad behavior holding you back and chosen a good habit to replace it, you must develop a detailed action plan to turn that habit into reality. Simply knowing what you need to do only gives you about a 10% chance of achieving it. To increase your odds of success, you need a clear, actionable plan. That's where the SMART, SMART framework, comes in. SMART goals ensure that your action plan is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. The goal isn't to obsess over the results of being more trusted by your customer. That's your ultimate objective. But rather to focus on the process, the actions you take that will lead to that result. By applying the SMART framework to your chosen habit, you'll create a system for consistent progress and accountability. Breaking down SMART for your habit. Specific. Your action plan needs to be crystal clear. Vague habits like, I will improve communication with my customer, won't cut it. Instead, refine it into something actionable, such as, I will respond to my customers' emails within 24 hours, and if I can't completely respond to the email, I will respond within 24 hours, giving the customer a time in which I will provide a complete response. Consider the who, what, when, where, and how of the new goal. The why should be obvious, so you can be more trusted by the customer. Another example is if your new habit is to improve intimacy with the customer, be specific. I will meet with my customer face-to-face for 30 minutes every 2 weeks to review their project status and address any concern. Measurable. How will you know if you're succeeding? You must track and log your efforts to monitor your progress. For example, if your habit is to increase the frequency of communication, you can track the number of face-to-face meetings, phone calls, or email responses you provide each week. Setting a measurable goal is a 4-step process. Determine a metric you will use. For example, how long does it take for you to respond to an email on average? Find a measurement method or tool. In the same example, a way to measure could be that once a week you check every customer's email, check the date and time, and then check the date and time of your reply email. Another way would be to check the date and time of the original customer email whenever you respond to them and immediately write down the response time. Use a measurement method that is easiest for you to implement. Set a baseline. Once you know how to measure, start measuring what you do now. You may be able to look at historical data or start now. Collect enough data to establish a meaningful baseline of your current performance. Determine an achievable but not too easy target goal. More on that in the next component of SMART. Additionally, grading your performance helps you stay accountable. For instance, A. Responded to all customers' emails within 24 hours. B. Responded to at least 80% of the customers' emails within 24 hours, but never more than 48 hours. C. Responded to less than 80% of the customers' emails within 24 hours and sometimes responded longer than 48 hours later. F. Responded to fewer than 50% of the customers' emails within 24 hours and sometimes didn't respond within a week. Achievable. Your habit must be realistic and within your control. It shouldn't rely on factors outside your influence, such as the customer's response or someone else in the organization. Instead, focus on what you can do consistently. Your goal must also not be too easy. For example, deciding to respond to the customer's email within 1 hour might be too aggressive and unachievable. It might also not be important enough to the customer to make a difference. You have to strike the right balance in the difficulty versus ease of the goal. If it's too easy, you will not develop a new habit and probably not make a significant enough change for the customer to be more trusted. If it's too hard, you will be unable to turn it into a habit and eventually drop it. Think of it as the Goldilocks rule. Not too easy, but not too hard. However, if the new habit is too hard, yet required to gain the customer's trust, you may want to do it in steps. Adopt a habit that gets you closer to the final goal, but something that could help you build an interim habit. And once it becomes a habit, later I will discuss how you know when it became a habit, start developing a new habit that will be a little more aggressive. If, for example, you established as a baseline that your average response time to a customer email is 48 hours, and you respond within 24 hours only 56% of the time, then a reasonable goal would be to respond within 24 hours more than 80% of the time, and that the average response time should not exceed 36 hours. A goal of responding within 40 hours would be too easy, and a goal of responding within an hour would be too hard. Relevant. Your habit must address the specific bad behavior you're trying to fix. If the issue is poor responsiveness, don't set a habit of having coffee meetings with the customer unless it directly resolves their concern. Your habit should directly counteract the trust gap you're trying to close. For example, if the customer thinks your investment strategies as their financial advisor are unclear and ineffective, proactively sending updates on the performance of their investment portfolio and benchmarking it against specific indices will directly address their concern. Time-bound. Your habit must have clear timeframes. When will you do it? How often? When will you evaluate your progress? For example, instead of vaguely committing to increase customer interactions, commit to sending a project update email every Friday by 5 p.m. Break your timeline into manageable steps and track your efforts weekly to avoid falling behind. With a well-defined SMART action plan, you'll be set up for success in forming your new habit. The clearer and more actionable your plan is, the greater your chances of building trust with your customer. This is where we'll pause for now. In this episode, we introduced Chapter 18, Trust Habits, and we covered the first 4 steps of the 7-step Trust Habits framework. 1. Focus on the segment, identifying the customer group most likely to value and pay for trust. 2. Identifying the limiting behaviors, recognizing the habits or actions that are quietly hurting your trustworthiness. 3. Define new habits, replacing those limiting behaviors with actions that build trust instead. And 4, making it smart, turning each habit into something specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. These are the foundations for transforming how you're perceived and how much your customers trust you. Now, I had planned to cover all 7 steps in this episode, but we're already at 36 minutes, and I wanted to make sure to give you the next 3 steps the attention that they deserve. So, in the next episode, 2 weeks from now, we'll go over steps 5 through 7. How to make your habits stick, how to stay accountable, and how to repeat until trust becomes second nature. Until then, I hope this made you think a little differently about trust and the trust premium. May trust be with you. This was The Trust Show. What would you like to know about trust and trustworthiness? Let me know and I'll answer it in a future episode. I would love to hear from you. Email me at yoram@thetrustshow.com. If you like this episode, subscribe to the show so you will automatically get notified when I release a new episode. Rate it. Write a review for this podcast because those ratings help not only you, but also others looking for podcasts just like this. If you're looking for more resources to learn about how to build trust, be trusted, or know who to trust, look up my workshops, online courses, books, or go to my website, trusthabits.com. And remember that the answer to these 2 questions will have the biggest impact on your personal and professional success or failure. Can I trust you? And can you trust me? Thank you for listening or watching The Trust Show.